fight like hell and get help if you can, and find your moments of joy and hang on to them. For Mimi, it's her son trying to save her on the treadmill. For me, it was my hand touching my son's hand through the glass and having it mean something to both of us. Mindy had her moments of joy walking with Jim this week. So like, find your moments of joy and hang on to them.
Yeah, I would say hunt for the beauty. Hunt for the beauty. It's there. Just keep looking.
This is Randy Kay. A listener wrote us on Facebook asking how we hang on to our relationship with our sons in the face of serious mental illness, and what's our relationship like now. So we speak about that, and also how a mass shooter's family tried to prevent tragedy in Maine, and this month's campaign to raise awareness for co-occurring disorders, which could end in overdose or suicide. Welcome to our podcast, Schizophrenia, Three Moms in the Trenches. From the place where schizophrenia and real life collide. East Coast, West Coast, Middle America. With Miriam Feldman, Mindy Greiling, and Randy Kay. Finally, a place to talk about the truth. This is an episode you have asked us for. It is episode 77, and it's just going to be the three moms in the trenches. And what spurred this episode was a question on our Facebook page. You can follow us on Facebook, Schizophrenia, Three Moms in the Trenches, something like that. If you search it, you will find it. And a reader, Ruth Ellen, asked a question that just almost made me cry. And she said, Mimi and Randy and Mindy, I'd like to know, what is your relationship like with your son now? How was it before he was sick? Not how was he, but how were you all as mother and son? And how has it changed? How are you as mother and son now? She goes on to share that she is mom and guardian, conservator of her son, and grieving the loss of what we had and what we shared. She said, I'd love to hear how you three women have learned to cope specifically with this, not the medicine, the addictions, the system, etc., but coping with the loss. She shares that there's my son living with schizophrenia, me, the caregiver. Very rarely do the two come together as peas in a pod as we used to. And she feels as if she lost her left arm. And that really resonated with me. We've been at this a long time. So that will be the crux of this Just Us episode. But we have two other important things to talk about as well. And, this is November 5th, and a couple of weeks after a horrible mass shooting in Maine. And I posted on our Facebook page that, and this is from Time Magazine as well, 5 months before this mass shooting, the family of the gunman alerted the local sheriff that they were becoming concerned about his mental health while he had access to firearms. And I think they tried to do some things, but again, we're not really to talk about the system, but just according to the deputy's report, again, this is Time Magazine, I trust it. He said he reached out to the reserves unit commander. The shooter was in the reserves, and said that the Army was trying to get treatment for Card. And the commander said he thought it was maybe best to let Card have some time to himself for a bit. And we all know what happened. So, hi guys. What are your thoughts on this horrendous mass shooting and the fact that the family tried to send out warnings 5 months prior and their concerns? Any thoughts? To
me, it's just the same story over and over and over again. Whenever there's somebody with a serious mental illness that does a shooting, I always read down the page to see about the family or to see what's been going on. And when nobody listens to the family, this often is the result for people who have a propensity for dangerousness, which is more. Remember when we had Dr. Lieberman on, he said, you know, people who are treated are like any other person. People that commit low-level crimes, even if they have a mental illness, are like anybody else. It's 3 or 4%. But when we get to dangerous, violent crimes, it's 20 to 30% of people with serious mental illnesses, especially if drugs are involved. So it's just deja vu. Mental health organizations want to sweep it under the rug and say nobody is ever dangerous, and then others want to say it's guns, but it's both, as Dr. Lieberman told us in that program. And it breaks my heart, because as soon as this happens, parents are no longer supplicants with the mental health system. Then they're dealing with crime and prison, and that is just always the biggest fear for all parents.
And unfortunately, prison and police and all of that are often the only pathway to getting treatment. So it's this circle. And, you know, I can understand, honestly, I agree with everything you just said, Mindy, but I can also understand from the police. I would wonder what the statistics are on how many calls do they get of exactly the type that this family did when the person doesn't end up doing anything. I mean, maybe they get a lot of calls and they, because of people's civil rights, can't go
I
out
don't
there.
blame the police at all. I think
Yeah.
they're in a bad spot, just like families. I blame the idea that we don't take into account anosognosia, people who don't know they're sick, and we don't listen to families. And if the mental health system did those two things, we could do a lot to prevent the kind of thing that happened in Maine.
Yeah. I mean, every time this happens, there's like this triad of mental health concerns, gun control concerns, and, you know, just the climate of the country, I think. You know, how much do you do before the fact is an issue. But it always just struck me, you know, five months before the family was trying to get help for their son so that their son wouldn't do what he did. On the other hand, we have a YouTube channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're obviously aware of it, and our subscribers are growing. And we generally get comments that are, thank you so much for being honest. We love you, three moms. You know, you're a lifeline. Every once in a while, we get another type of comment, and people can say what they want to say. And this was about our episode about conservatorship. And this was how infuriating these three moms are, lying to gain access to their child's information, scheming to put people in psychiatric hospitals when they don't meet the criteria for being held prisoner there. I feel so bad for their sons. Now, this hurts. I'm not going to answer a comment like this. Obviously, this person has never been there and doesn't understand how much we love our sons and are trying to protect them and keep them well. This is someone who's never been there. Consider the source. But I'm so aware that this is, from the uninitiated, a way to think.
And I would take another slant on that. If they're watching this program, maybe they have been there, but I would interpret that as somebody with a mental illness who wouldn't want conservatorship on themselves. And I can understand that totally. If a person is doing well, they don't need conservatorship, and they might fear it, or maybe they've had it and they got rid of it. I have sympathy for that person and that viewpoint. And when I deal with people like that, I never take it personally, because I think they have struggles just like we do. And so I do consider the source, but with great empathy.
You know, I think also the most complicated, complex component in this is mental illness. And if you were to make a Venn diagram, there's one component that would be very, very simple. I don't mean easy, but simple to remove. and that's access to guns. It's hard to figure out who is going to be violent. It's hard to figure out whose mental illness is going to lead to this, and if they're really mentally ill, and how to get them. I mean, it's a big morass, and we're here, the three of us and thousands of others, and we're not going to stop on that. But we've decided as a culture, as a society, that we will pay the price, that these shootings are the price that we're going to pay for the almighty access to guns and allowing people to have military weapons. And, this is outside of our mental health arena, but this is politics. And I will say, for one, we shouldn't have those guns anyway. And if you took that out of the Venn diagram, it would give a lot more time and energy and attention to dealing with the complexities of mental illness. If it was just whether mentally ill or sane or genius or moron, why do we need weapons of war?
I agree. And I took some hope to the fact that there was a Massachusetts legislator or congressman or somebody who was repenting afterwards and apologizing to his constituents that he's been always opposing any kind of gun legislation, and he's promised to do better. So we need more elected officials like that, because Massachusetts had a yellow flag law, not a red flag law. And a yellow flag law does exactly what you said, Mimi. It puts it all in the laps of the police to decide if they should have guns or not. And how are they supposed to be mental health people?
Yeah, there's a lot to it. Absolutely. And thank you for just we're saying what we think. And, before we leave the world of politics, where only Mindy is an expert, having been a state legislator for so many years, I'm just a lay politics person, but I just feel like, what's so wrong with saying I was wrong? With saying, I used to think this. I mean, they make such a big deal of that when people flip-flop, but you know what? I have flip-flopped about marijuana. I used to think marijuana was, just a symptom of schizophrenia. Well, more evidence has come in. And as you know, if you've listened to our podcast, I think we all agree that marijuana can cause psychosis, and new evidence has come in. And I'm to say, you know what? I used to think that, but I was wrong. Now, this is what I think. And I applaud that Massachusetts lawmaker who said, yeah, you know what? I have a better opinion now. So, all right, we'll leave that behind. Along the lines of family trauma and what we wish were preventable tragedies, I want to recall that about a year ago, we spoke to Stephanie Marcasano from the Harris Project, and her son sadly had a co-occurring disorder, mental health issues, and substance abuse issues. It is the 10th anniversary of her son's death. And she is a well-established advocate for the rights of families and the rights of people to live and get treatment. And this is on the 10th anniversary of her son's death, and the Harris Project, which exists to help create awareness and legislation for co-occurring disorders and not keep them so separate and have them be together. There is a 3-minute public service announcement that has been revealed, and we have permission to share it with you right now. So what I'm going to do, if you're watching on YouTube, I am just going to share my screen. It starts with a bunch of teenagers sitting around the pool playing a drinking game, and it kind of morphs into the inner thoughts of one of the teenagers or young woman in the game who has her own thoughts about her own substance abuse. And here we go.
Mr. McFarland?
Okay, I got one. Drink if you've stolen clothes from Lisa's closet.
I like that one.
Come on, I know at least one person.
Drink if you have a crush on someone that's not your boyfriend.
You said it, not me.
Drink if you posted a photo I look trash in because you look good in it.
Oh,
Drink if you have to drink to just to be here.
nobody.
Drink if you don't know why you just said that. Drink if no one likes you anyway. Drink if you replay every conversation you had that day in your bed at night. Drink if no one understands what you're so worried about all the time. Drink if you can't go to class without it. Drink if you're pretty sure everybody hates you. Drink if you've stolen your dad's pain meds because drinking doesn't cut it. Drink if you can't escape the thoughts in your head. Drink if you're so anxious it's happening again. Drink if you don't know what you just took. Drink to feel something. To feel nothing. Drink if no one even knows. If you're happy and you know happiness won't last. If you're depressed. If your mind is racing. If you're tired. If you can't focus on anything. If your mind won't shut the fuck up. Drink if you're afraid you won't wake up tomorrow. Drink if you don't care.
One in two people with substance abuses also struggle with mental health challenges. Treatment is often siloed rather than holistic. This is a 3-minute film. Stephanie's son Harris had a co-occurring disorder and died by accidental overdose now 10 years ago. This is going to be shown to policymakers in Washington, D.C., has the support of social media influencers, and they hope the film will not only raise awareness for co-occurring disorders, but jumpstart system transformation nationwide. It was developed in partnership with a creative agency, Havas New York, and a production company, Love Song, and it's rolling out all this November. You can watch it on YouTube as well. Check it out. It is called You Don't Know the Half of It, and you'll be seeing it. So thank you to Stephanie. That was episode 53 where she first appeared, and we have met her since. And I know my son has a co-occurring disorder, so
Ditto for my son. We've been through that as well, but luckily, and many suicide attempts too, but luckily Jim is still with us, unlike Harris. And Stephanie's a lovely person. And I always admire people whose children have died, who continue to advocate and even get stronger with advocacy. I'm not so sure I wouldn't just shut down. So I applaud Stephanie.
You know, I asked Jerry Clark that very question once, just when the two of us were shooting the breeze, because she works so hard. And she said, you know, she feels like Calvin, her son, who also has passed, delivered to her dharma, like her calls for living. And now it's the way that she keeps him alive and close to her. I agree with you, Mindy. I often think I would just shut down.
Mm-hmm.
So here we are fighting the good fight, and fortunate enough for our sons to still be here. So let's bring it back as promised to that initial inquiry from a listener and a follower on our Facebook page, Ruth Ellen, who just I'll read the question again and let's just chat about it. So Ruth Ellen her son's 21 and she's going through that transition of this used to be my best buddy to now I'm the caregiver and we're not peas in a pod anymore. In her words, she says, I feel as though I've lost my left arm. So she wants to know from us, like, how was it before your son got the illness? How were you as mother and son? Not just like, what was he like, but what was our relationship like? And how are we as mother and son now? Can I begin this only because
yes, you please do.
You guys know and listeners know that I am, for the first time in my life, hopefully temporarily, the mother of an inmate. My son, Ben, again, not his real name, but that's the name I use publicly, has been incarcerated waiting for a court date for over 3 months now. And I finally got to visit him yesterday.
Yay.
Yay.
I think anyway,
yes. Yeah. I mean, I gotta say, it's just surreal. I feel like I'm living in a movie because this, anytime you do something that's brand new that you've only seen happening on television, you're like, this is happening to me, to us. How can this be happening? He's in there for something he swears he didn't do, but he doesn't look very trustworthy with his homeless appearance. And I don't know. I can't, I don't even want to speak about that. I believe he's in there unjustly. However, he's in there. And so what I'm learning is, your child is not a name, is a number. Okay. And there's a whole process. The how-tos on the website are not exactly the way it works, and they have to get a form and they have to mail it to you and you've got to sign it, send it in, get approval to be on the visitor list, and then you have to apply it took 3 months anyway to get the right to visit. And there's a lot of rules. And I went to visit him a week ago and I showed up and they were on lockdown. And so they closed down the prison and I went, well, what is lockdown? They said, well, things happen. And so I asked if it was in the part that he's in, and the guard was kind enough to go, no, everyone's fine. But it's just, and I asked my son when I spoke to him, like, what does that mean? He goes, oh, we got to stay in our beds all day and they bring the food to us and we can't go. Anyway, I finally got to see him yesterday.
Could I ask a question really quickly? Did you say prison?
No, jail. He's in jail.
Okay.
He's in jail. So he's awaiting a court date. So so he's not behind bars.
Okay.
He's in, I think of it like Orange is the New Black. If you ever like, just sort of, there are no windows, but he's with 55 other people in a controlled environment where he's told what to do and where to go. The odd thing is I kind of thought, having watched movies, that I'd be like at a table with him and I could give him a hug and we could sit down. I said, oh, maybe I can bring Boggle because we love to play Boggle. But no, it was just like the other kind of movie where you wait and you give them your ID and everything has to go in a locker. And then you wait and you go through the metal detectors and you can't even bring in your ID. Like you can bring in nothing but the clothes on your back. And they bring us into the room. There were 3 women. One had a 5-year-old autistic child, and she had to fight to be able to bring a coloring book. Okay, but you know what? They let her. Well, I go in, and it's like the glass and the telephones, and it's like, what movie am I in?
I hope they don't still have that, but they do.
Where's Kojak? It was just so, it wasn't what I expected. Because it said in the handbook, I could give him a hug and then we'd sit across the table. But it was no, pick up the phones and your elbow. Remember the old phones when your elbow hurts, when you hold it up to your elbow to your ear for so long? And, my son walks in and it's my son. And it's prison scrubs, I'll call them. It's not a jumpsuit. It's like prison scrubs. He looks like himself, but we both kind of fumbled with the phone because we didn't know what to do. And for that moment when he was trying to figure out what to do, he looked like behind his eyes, he looked lost. So I'm like, oh my God, is he psychotic? But he was just confused about the phone. Once we got the phone figured out, we could talk to each other. the light came on behind his eyes again. But the moment for me, going back to Ruth's question, is when I put my hand up onto the glass and he put his hand up onto the glass. And we must have done that 5 times during our half-hour visit. Like, just, there was the mother-son connection. And seeing him in person, even though we've had some very nice, and he's safe and sober, it was a good visit. I was able to ask him, do you feel safe here? And he was able to answer me honestly. And we're going on a family trip and he can't come. And he said, I understand, I'm in jail. So it was him. That's what I'll say. I mean, it was him. It was my boy, my 41-year-old boy. And I'd say he's being a pretty good sport about it. And he's hopeful and nervous about his court date. We have collected so many good character letters and we hope he goes to jail diversion. But, you know, in terms of our relationship, that moment was a moment that reminded me, this is my baby. Any mother that looks at any grown son will see the baby and the toddler and the teenager and the grown man. In our cases, our grown men haven't turned out quite the way we imagined. And I know from both of your books when they were younger. But that connection of just wanting my hand to touch his hand was still there. So that's all I'll say about that. What about you guys?
Well, you know, what I would say, you know, spinning off of what you just said to the woman who wrote to us, is your story about Ben is a good metaphor that we should all try and use. Because I remember initially looking at Nick and again feeling that bizarro world thing of like, what is going on? There he is standing in front of me, my beautiful son, healthy, upright, looking the same as he always did, but not him anymore. He wasn't there anymore. He became somebody different. He exited, you know, the Nick I knew was gone. And I mourned that in a very incomplete way for a long time, because how do you mourn somebody who's gone but there, and also still there in a form that requires the utmost vigilance and attention from you? It's an excruciating thing to go through. But now here we are 20 years later, and I look back at it, and Nick and I were always close. And really the nucleus, the essence of our relationship hasn't changed a bit. And I would say to our friend who wrote to us, I don't feel like I lost my left arm, because, and I went through a lot of time when Nick wasn't there. But you know what? What I lost was a dream of how I thought it was supposed to be, not Nick. This is who I brought into the world. This is how he came to me. And the thing I had to let go of is the dream or the idea. But the left arm is still there. It just doesn't look or function the way I thought it was going to, but that's in my head. You still got your left arm, and that is your boy. And believe me, I'm not minimizing or mitigating the grief and the loss that you feel, but your boy's also still quite young. And when Nick was in his early 20s, he was gone in some other world I didn't know. But he's 38 years old now, and yeah, it's not the dream, and it's not what I thought it was going to be, but we could still drive around in the car and listen to old rock and roll music and talk about stuff, and he's there next to me, and that's my son. That's who I brought here, and that's who I will continue to take care of and be part of. So maybe there's some way, and I think, you know, it can get worse and your son can die. I mean, look at how many people we talk to who that happens. But you didn't lose him. He's just different than you thought he was going to be right now.
I sometimes say to people, I don't know why, this is who the universe gave me to take care of, gave us to take care of as best we can, and doing my job. I read a book once when Ben was a teenager and just, I thought, going through a tough adolescence. And I was a single mother. So I think you both had your husbands by your side, but I was a single mother. And I remember reading a book about mothers and sons, and it said something like, if we all were in a tribe, when our sons reached 13 or 14 or 15, there'd be like this metaphorical bridge to take him away from us toward the men of the tribe. And so we would have to send our son on the bridge, and the men from the tribe would come get him and bring him to the other side, and they'd go into the woods and shoot bears or whatever they would do, to bring him to manhood, because his job is to leave us and eventually grow up and want to take care of their mothers. And so every mother loses her we're two peas in a pod son. Every mother does. But some of them lose their sons to a mature man who goes out into the world in a more predictable way, and, maybe comes back to go, oh, that's my mommy, I'm going to take care of her. And we're probably not going to get that. So, every mother loses oh, my son's my best buddy for a while. And what comes back over the bridge, I think, depends. What are your thoughts, Mindy?
Well, I'm kind of with both of you. When Jim was 21, he was like your son, Randy, in jail. And we had the very same thing you did. I was hoping it had changed by then, but we had the plexiglass and the telephone, and Jim was in an orange jumpsuit, and they all went with shackles on their handcuffs, and then they had to shuffle in with ankle shackles when they came to court. So that was Montana, and it was 20 years ago. So that was I really thought I had lost my son at that time when he was 21 and in jail. But I'm with Mimi now with we just have a different son than we expected, because Jim was a very loving child. He was a difficult teenager, like I think all of our sons, using drugs, and we did not know that how dangerous that was. And then we had some very rocky years when he didn't get the proper antipsychotic and treatment. He was with a woman who was emotionally abusing him for like 6 years, and he was very horrible to me and sometimes to Roger, but especially me. And we had just terrible times. That was, kind of like what my whole book was about. But now Jim is 45, and he didn't get married. He's away from that girlfriend that he had, but he's the sweet, lovable person that he was when he was a sweet little boy, and before he started using drugs as a teenager. And because of his illness, he's not living in another state, like our daughter, and he's, he doesn't have kids. We didn't provide grandchildren, but he's just a sweetheart. And today we took a 2.5 hour walk at the Minnesota River bottoms, which is a beautiful area right next to the Mississippi River, and just talked and had a really mellow time. He has an apartment, but he's here, at our house 90 to 95% of the time. But he's doing really well with Dr. Laitman that Mimi's son has too. And so, getting the proper treatment so that he has his mind. And then I also grieved, as I think I've said on other programs, about him being so heavy, grossly obese, over 300 pounds. And now he's with shooting distance, like 5 or 6 pounds under Dr. Laitman's care of his regular weight. So I don't have to, being the vain mother that I am, grieve that he doesn't even look like he did before, because now he does. He looks like he did before, except he's 45. He's a very handsome man, and he's just sweet. He's spending a lot of time this week figuring out what he's going to give to his family members for Christmas presents. He loves to give to others. He's so generous. and he has friends. He goes camping with them. I feel like I just have a sweetheart of a son. We did have a scare, as I mentioned, a couple of programs ago. So it's nothing is ever permanent. But he took too much of his antipsychotic, too much clozapine, because he wasn't feeling as good as he thought he should. And so he unilaterally took it into his own hands to take too much. So we had a taste of what we were dealing with when Jim was 21. He was out of his mind and didn't know. He doesn't even remember what went on that week, but we do. And so, you know, it's always touch and go. But I would say to the mother who's got a 21-year-old that your best years are ahead. You might not have a person bringing in a lot of salary, having a big job, having kids, having a wife. But some people actually are doing some of those things now too with better meds.
Yeah,
So,
you know, it's possible.
hope. Pardon me?
And that is possible. You know, Randy, something that you said, there's just quick story I want
You mean
to
just
share.
lean in closer to your computer because we can't hear you that well. Go ahead.
Remember you said something about the son who then comes back and takes care of you and protects you and all of that. And, you know,
Sometimes.
recently I went off on a tear. I went off on a tear in my own mind because I'm like, my problem is I'm pathologically competent. So no one ever helps me with anything because everybody always assumes that I can take care
You're
of
capable.
myself. Yeah. And so I was going, I don't know, off in my head about how no one ever saves me. There's no one who would ever save me. And one thing that I've started doing with Nick now is we got ourselves a trainer and we go to the gym together 4 days a week. Old Jewish mom and her grown-ass son and our trainer. And we're quite a spectacle. Get your TikTok phone videos ready, but we're doing it and it's going well. And we were on the treadmills, Nick and me, and we're walking side by side. And of course, being me, I don't know, I tried to take off my shirt because it was hot, and then the shirt dropped, and then I went to reach the shirt, and you kind of have to stay on task when you're on a treadmill.
Yeah.
So it almost went horribly.
That's why
wrong.
I don't get on one.
Yeah. So things went horribly wrong for a split second there. And you know, his initial reaction right next to me is he just turned and stopped and went to like, help me. And he almost fell too. And we both almost fell. And I just we recovered and we continued walking. And I mean, he didn't know, but I just got all choked up. And I said to him, Nick, you tried to save me. And he said, well, yeah. And I realized that, okay, I got my grown-ass crazy son next to me on the treadmill, but he'll still save me if I need saving. And I'm carrying that with me. That made me feel very happy.
Yeah.
That's so wonderful. I had rotator cuff surgery 3 years ago, and Jim sat with me, and I had to have an ice pack every so often, and all these medicines and everything. And he just, he did all of that, and Roger did some of it, but he was the one who put in my videos and just was with me all the time. I just think he took care of me too.
That's really nice. I have two reactions to what you just said, and one of them is also because I'm rereading the initial note that that set this all off, and one is that, you know, we've come a long way, and you know, our sons are a little older now, and we've been through hell, and sometimes still go through hell, and we're doing our best, and but many people I know with schizophrenia, the greatest gift they can have is being able to help someone else. My son is at his best when somebody needs his help. A niece, a nephew, you know, assuming he's sober and, you know, and on his meds in treatment. That's why he loved being a waiter in a restaurant. Loved it. He used to bring like all kinds of colored pens in his pocket. So if there were kids in the family he was waiting on, he would give them pens to play with. He loves to help. I think it's a human need to help. And at their best, when that can come out in them, everybody feels like they need a purpose. The other thing I'm going to mention is that we are each lucky enough to have other children as well. We all have daughters. And for some people, this is their only child. And what I would say to you, if that's you, is that there is great comfort in community. It is very, very lonely to be the only mom on the block whose kid isn't going to college or whose kid is in the mental hospital. And this is where go to a family-to-family class, go to, there are virtual, we interviewed Judith Smith, I think her name was,
Yes.
Mothering Difficult Children. She has virtual support groups about that. If you feel like if this is your only child and you thought this child, you were going to be two peas in a pod forever, then the second best thing is to get community. I took great comfort from a book. I don't know if it's out of print, but it's called Shut Up About Your Perfect Kid. It was just a great title. When everybody else's children were getting master's degrees and mine was just getting out of the psychiatric hospital, it helps to know you're not alone. It's a booby prize, but you know what? One of my passions when I speak to groups is about the value of community, because without community, without communication with other people, without you guys, I would feel really, really lonely on top of worried. And so to know that you're not alone is a huge gift you can give yourself. And, as far as mothers and sons, I'm teaching a family-to-family class. I'm going to Disney World tomorrow, so I'm going to miss it. But we have people, and they opened this class reading that very famous essay about, I wanted to go to Italy, and I was all set to go to Italy, and then we landed in Holland, and I didn't want to be in Holland, but turns out I love Holland. And it's a very famous essay around the circles of parents of children with disabilities. But it was more geared toward those having children with birth defects and Down syndrome, I believe. And a lot of people in family to family were like, I can't even relate to that essay. I don't like Holland at all. So, realize that not everybody's story is everybody's story. And, sometimes community, at least you won't be alone in Holland. If you know that other families are going through it. Parenting is often not what we imagined when we were pregnant.
I'm really glad you said all of that, Randy, because we are lucky to have other kids too, because when we die, then we will have our kids who can help our sons. And that is something that single parents or parents with one child don't have. And Jim has a friend who's an only child. And so his parents are working with our family we're trying to find a way to have our two sons, either live together in an apartment with 2 bedrooms or in apartments or condos side by side. Because they're a little bit older than Roger and me. Well, they're about Roger's age, but they're a little bit older than me, and so is Roger. He just turned 79 on his birthday. So, but they have figured out a way to think about their son when they are no longer able to take care of him or have died, by working with our family and with Jim. And then if Jim is with his friend, by proximity, if Angela's helping Jim ever, then she would be helping Steve as well. So there are creative ways that we have to go through when we have sons like we do, or daughters.
And I think
I think the thing is, we say think outside of the box, and that's exactly what we always have to do. That's what this requires. The box is gone. The box is in Italy, we're in Holland, and we have to do things differently now.
Right.
And it's a bitter pill to swallow, but it is what it is.
It is. And I would say certainly that aftercare, thinking about after we're gone, is a whole other episode for another show, because not all children I don't know that my daughter wants that responsibility.
Right.
I don't know that she needs it, so it's not a given that other children will step in. Final words about just from each of us, about the mother-son relationship and making, I won't say peace with it, making the best of it. And my final word would be fight like hell and get help if you can, and find your moments of joy and hang on to them. For Mimi, it's her son trying to save her on the treadmill. For me, it was my hand touching my son's hand through the glass and having it mean something to both of us. Mindy had her moments of joy walking with Jim this week. So find your moments of joy and hang on to them, because moments are always fleeting. And that would be what saves me. When I have a good day or a good moment, I go, all right, we had a good moment. I can just kind of add that to the list. Last minute thoughts from each of you. It's been an hour, by the way, believe it or
We
not.
could go forever. We're the worst.
Actually,
I
you
would
made
say-
my last thought, so thank you, Randy. You kind of gave it for all of us.
Yeah, I would say hunt for the beauty. Hunt for the beauty. It's there in everything. Just keep looking.
Keep looking. We are three moms in the trenches still. My book has been Behind His Voices. Mimi's is He Came In With It, and Mindy's is Fix What You Can. This is Schizophrenia, Three Moms in the Trenches. We have some exciting episodes coming up. Have a great week. Hey, thanks for joining us for this episode of Schizophrenia, Three Moms in the Trenches with Randy Kay, Mindy Greiling, and Miriam Feldman. To get in touch with us or to learn more about our books, please visit our websites at miriam-feldman.com, mindygreiling.com, or randykay.com.